Good afternoon. Welcome once again to the Winning Digital Customers Livecast. I'm Howard Tiersky, and I'm joined today by an awesome guest. His name is Dan Gingiss. He is the author of an awesome new book called The Experience Maker: How to Create Remarkable Experiences That Your Customers Can't Wait to Share. Fantastic book. Dan is an expert in customer experience. He has held senior executive roles driving customer experience with McDonald's, Discover, Humana. So he has been in the trenches for 2 decades, fighting the good fight around customer experience. And I'm so excited that he's now documented everything he ever learned into this book. Well, no, maybe not everything, but still, there's an awful lot packed into this book, a great book. And he's also a speaker and a coach. Well, I'm told by some he's considered the handsomest customer experience guy in the entire industry. So I've heard that. You know, it's of course subjective, but I'll leave it to you. You can see him, you can make your own judgments. But in any case, please join me in welcoming Dan. Thank you so much for being here.
Definitely in the top 2 of CX experts on this particular show.
Right. Fair enough. Yes. It's like my 11-year-old and my 9-year-old decided to do a race this weekend at a carnival where they have those obstacle courses with the inflatable slides. And my 11-year-old absolutely destroyed my 9-year-old because he had a hard time getting over this rock wall. So she did it in probably 30 seconds. He did it in like 2.5 minutes. But we decided that she won in the 10 and up category and he won in the below 10 category. So
there you go. That works. That's great.
Well, let's dive in and talk about your book. Perhaps just let's start with talk a little bit about why did you write? There are a lot of customer experience books on the market. I think this has brings a new voice and some new ideas to it. But I'd love to hear what led you to write this book and kind of how does this book differ from perhaps everything else that's out there?
Well, I come at customer experience from a slightly different angle because I spent all this time in corporate America, as you mentioned, and many of the roles that I had were actually in marketing. And so I came out of college as a marketer, spent most of my career as a marketer until I evolved into customer experience. And the thing that I realized at some point was that customer experience, a great customer experience, is so much more powerful than any email campaign, any social media campaign, any direct mail campaign, even any Super Bowl ad. It is better than any marketing that you can do because it gets your customers to do the marketing for you. And we know that customers are the most credible sources of marketing. It's so much better for you to hold up my book and say it's a great book than for me to tell you it's a great book because I'm not as credible in there. And so the same is true with companies. And so I feel like I live at the intersection of customer experience and marketing. I think it's a unique intersection that the other folks in CX, whom I love dearly because they're my friends and colleagues, don't generally sit at that same intersection. And that's what I think I bring to this book, filled with lots of stories. I love being a storyteller. And the hope is that they will inspire people to go back to work as soon as this afternoon or tomorrow and start thinking about CX differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that that's even more true today than it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago because of social media and sites like Yelp and other review sites, because it used to be that if you wanted to inquire about something, you know, if I was thinking about going to a given resort, let's say, if I knew somebody who'd been there, then absolutely, that was a credible source of information. But what are the odds, right? And now, because you can find reviews online about almost anything, and of course, there's always ways to game those reviews. They may not be 100%, truthful, but nevertheless, I think they carry a lot of credibility. And of course, if you have thousands and thousands of reviews, it's tough to game that. So all of a sudden, the voice of the customer can be heard so much more. I think that just further amplifies that point that, you know, delivering a great experience that, as you say, that people want to share is probably your cheapest marketing strategy.
Well, yeah, and social media also propelled this forward. I mean, before social media, when you and I were growing up, Howard, there was no way that we could talk positively about a brand in public. I mean, there was no way to compliment the brand, right? I remember when I was a kid, I'd send letters sometimes in hope that I'd get a sticker back or something, or a letter from an executive back, right? But we didn't have that mechanism. And I love focusing on the positivity of customer experience because there's so much out there that's negative. And the whole basis for the book is that the research shows customers are actually more willing to share positive experiences than negative ones We just don't have very many positive ones. And the book aims to help companies create those positive experiences that then people want to share in social media using their social capital, which is so much more credible and valuable to talk about your brand.
Yes, absolutely. Why do you think this is still such a iconoclastic idea in corporate America today? Because you and I drink the same Kool-Aid. So to me, this seems obvious, but I know anyone who's working in a large corporation will know that to say this is probably not, you're not going to necessarily automatically get a lot of heads nodding in the room. Why do you think there's, or tell me if you disagree with my assessment here, but why do you think there's so much resistance? Why is this not what everybody's focused on?
It's a great question, Howard, and thank goodness it isn't so obvious. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't have a job, right? So we know, I mean, the reality is that companies are spending billions and billions of dollars on acquiring new customers. B2C companies, B2B companies, that's where they spend all their marketing dollars. But then these people become customers and no one pays attention to them. And there is very little money being spent on making sure that our existing customers have a good enough experience, a great enough experience that they want to keep doing business with us, stay longer, spend more, and refer others. And the problem with that is, and I talk about this concept in the book of the leaky bucket. If we don't focus on our existing customers, you know what happens? They leave for a company that will focus on them. And it's so easy to switch providers now, whether you're talking about a cable company or a barbershop or a lawyer or a dentist or whatever business you're in. There's 1,000 other businesses that do the same thing you do, and the switching costs are so minuscule that if we're not giving the customers a great experience, they pick up and they leave. And so every business has somewhat of a leaky bucket where customers are dripping out of the bottom of the bucket and going somewhere else. And this is incredibly dangerous to profitability, to the whole ongoing concern of the business. And it also makes the marketing and sales harder because we're not only trying to bring on new customers, we're making up for the ones we're losing. And instead, if we just focused a little bit more on the ones we have, guess what? They won't leave, which will relieve some of the stress on marketing and sales because we won't have to bring in as many customers.
Yeah. And, I would echo what I said earlier here, which is I think the digital transformation of the world over the last 10 or 15 years has further lowered those switching costs for customers because everything now, instead of having, if I drive to a store and I'm having bad service, yes, I could abandon my cart, get my car, drive across town to another store if I'm really, really annoyed enough. But that's a lot of switching costs for me. Whereas if I'm just on a website and all I have to do is, hit create new tab and Google something quickly 2 seconds later, be on another site, all of a sudden my switching costs are approaching zero. And I think that further underlines the importance of exactly what you're discussing.
Yeah, I had an experience a few months ago where I was looking for a particular HDMI cable. I had bought a new camera and I was supposed to get the micro HDMI and I got a mini and I didn't know there was a difference between the two, right?
That too.
And so I'm about to film something in the afternoon. This is the morning and I need a micro cord like right now. And so I get in my car and I drive to a major big box retailer who doesn't carry these in stock. So I drive to a second major retailer who tells me that the product is only available online. Now, let's ask ourselves, Howard, if I'm going to buy it online, am I really going to that big box retailer site or am I probably going to the big A? I went to a third retailer who was not even open that day. It's 11 o'clock on a weekday, and for whatever reason, they're not even open. So I come home, and what do? I order from Amazon. And Amazon, as always, delivers. And so you ask yourself, hey, 3 companies had an opportunity to gain my business that day, and all 3 of them failed for different reasons. Now, the next time I need a piece of electronic equipment, do we think that I'm going back to any of those 3? Because the answer is absolutely not. And so that's how easy it is, A, to find an alternative, in this case, Amazon, and B, to lose a customer. Because now I know I can't count on those 3 big box stores when I need something. And that's how, again, that's the reality today and you're right, the digital piece makes it so much easier to shop around. And, any of those companies could have done something to help me find this product faster, but they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about what to do about it. I mean, in that particular case, it would have been helpful if they had foreseen that you were likely to want a cable of this particular nature and had it in stock. But I would imagine some might be listening to your story and feeling some empathy for the retailer and saying, well, how could we have known that that's what Dan wanted, even though Amazon seems to know.
Let me tell you this, if you sell digital cameras and you sell laptops, you should sell the cords to connect the two of them together. That's not a crazy use case, right? And so, I mean, I don't think I was asking. It's not like I was going to the grocery store looking for this cord, right? I mean, I was going to a place that sells both of the items that I'm trying to connect together, but doesn't include that cord. And again, to give the excuse that it's an online only item sort of defeats the purpose of having a brick and mortar store. I mean, let's face it. Almost everything can be an online item, right? I mean, Amazon sells almost everything on the planet. So if I'm in your store, it's because I need to be in a brick and mortar and I need it now. And so you having it online only is not particularly helpful. As to what to do about it, though, it's a broader question. It's not so much an inventory issue as it is, how do we treat our existing customers to make them feel valued, to make them feel like they are getting an experience from us, and to make them want to talk about us? And the answer is not to ask them to talk about us. You know, all of these, well, please follow us on Instagram and use our hashtag and be sure to take your picture of this and tag us. Too many instructions. As a friend of mine likes to say, if you have to tell someone it's a selfie spot, it probably isn't, because the whole idea of a selfie is that it's spontaneous. Don't tell me to take a selfie, right? So the book really talks about what kinds of experiences do people want to share? And how do we get it so that we don't have to ever ask? They just automatically pull out their phones. It's like they can't help themselves. They pull out their phones, they take a picture of it, and they share it. Those are the kinds of experiences that we want to be trying to create, because it's absolutely free marketing.
So you talk in your book about the WISE model, the process, the steps to go through. Because I can imagine someone in a role like roles you've had in the past saying, all right, you know, I'm a director of marketing or I'm a vice president of marketing. But, well, frankly, you know, one of the challenges, some of this, you're talking about how much more valuable of a customer acquisition approach this is. And yet oftentimes these don't even feel like things that marketing is sort of empowered to deal with, right? This is one of the challenges of large companies is marketing might say, well, that's not my turf. What would be the sort of practical next steps? Let's say someone is listening to you and they go, amen, Dan, you are right. And I am going to change my ways. Tomorrow I'm going to work and I am going to make a difference. What steps should they go through to figure out what things to do within their organization to make a difference, and then to actually get them executed? Especially listening to this live cast tends to be people at large enterprises like where you've worked, especially in those large enterprises where it's not so easy to just make a decision if it doesn't fall within your domain of responsibility.
Yeah, well, first of all, the examples shared in the book, and there are dozens and dozens of them, all went through the same filter. They had to be simple, practical, and inexpensive. And that filter is very intentional. It is because I know how hard it is to get stuff done in corporate America. I know how hard it is to get it past legal, to get budget approval, to get your boss to say, okay, to get through all the red tape. And so the examples are really meant to inspire you to say, I can just go do this. I'm not even sure that I need permission to do it. The main point, though, in what you're suggesting is, I think there's two things that help to elevate customer experience. The first is getting rid of existing pain points. How do we know what those pain points are? We either have to talk to our customers or we have to become a customer ourselves. If you own a company that has a website, ask yourself when the last time is you logged into your own website. In fact, do yourself one better. Forget your password on your website and go through the forgotten password process. Easily one of the most annoying processes that any company has. And ask yourself how we can make this better. A lot of times the leaky bucket is caused by the old death by 1,000 paper cuts syndrome, right? Is that you annoy me once, you annoy me twice, you annoy me 3 times. At some point, I'm just tired of you annoying me and I'm going to go to someone that doesn't. Now that getting rid of the pain points is a really good starting point, because that causes people to not dislike you. Then we have to focus on creating experiences that specifically are above and beyond, or as the book talks about, going from ordinary to extraordinary. And that's using the WISE model. WISE stands for witty, immersive, shareable, and extraordinary. And there are 4 concepts used either individually or together that help to create the kinds of experiences that people want to talk about. And the reality is, and good news for all of us, the bar for customer experience is really, really low. As I said, most people can't remember the last time that they had a great experience worthy of discussion, remarkable, worthy of telling other people about. And so we create that experience, and they have no choice but to share it. Let me give you an example that's in the book that I think serves as a great metaphor for this. My son wanted to go out to a nice steak dinner for his birthday. So we took him to Fleming's Steakhouse. I told them that it was his birthday ahead of time. When we walked in, the maitre d' handed my son a hand-signed birthday card. Now, I had never seen this before, and I was impressed. And I'm a CX guy, so to impress me, you got to go a little bit more than average, and I was really impressed. So we're sitting down, we're enjoying our dinner, and the family conversation, which is what happens, as I'm sure you know, when a parent works in customer experience, was around, well, if they gave us a greeting card, a birthday card, I'll bet they're not going to have a slice of cake and a candle at the end because everybody else has that. They're going to do something really special. And so we were talking about what that might look like. And sure enough, Fleming's did not disappoint. They came out after the meal with a box of handmade chocolates that was on a plate that had happy birthday spelled out in cocoa powder. And instead of a candle, they had a sparkler because sparklers are so much cooler. And I am telling you, the moment that waiter put that down on the table, 4 people reached into their pockets, pulled out their phones without being told to, took a picture. The adult shared it to Facebook, the kids shared it to Snapchat, and boom, there you go. You got 4 different accounts that are talking about Fleming's, tagging them, and saying how awesome they are. So the metaphor here is, I want you to look for your slice of cake and candle where you're doing something nice for a customer, but you're doing the same nice thing everyone else is doing, so it doesn't stand out. And I want you to figure out how to turn that into your box of chocolates and your sparkler, which doesn't necessarily cost any more. It's not necessarily any more difficult to achieve. It just stands out because it's different, and people like different.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great story and a great example. And I imagine that in some organizations, I'm going to ask you, by the way, if you wouldn't mind to give us one more of them, and then we'll save the rest for those who shell out for the book. But before I do, on something like that, I know very often when ideas like that come up in companies, someone does say, well, wait a minute, what's that box of chocolate going to cost us? What's the level of effort for my team, right? This is something operationally I have to implement. Even the card might cost $1, but I've got to make it happen. I've got to train people, et cetera, et cetera. And so there does tend to be that cost benefit equation that says, it sounds nice, but like, how much value is there? Do you have any model that you use when you talk about, okay, 4 people picked up their phones, they shared it on social media. How do you value that? If I said, let's say it costs, I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say someone calculated it costs $7.25 for Fleming's to do that between the wholesale cost of the box of chocolates and a few other things they had to do. They're not billing you, I'm assuming, for the chocolates, so it's a freebie. So how do you show that we're going to get more than $7.25? Or is that not what you need to do? What do you need to do to go up against that argument of, we've got cost on this side of the equation, show me the advertising value of those 4 posts on social media, et cetera?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'm going to answer it with another example and then come back to why I think this example serves to answer your question. Great. I ordered a set of pots and pans from Amazon. I received the set, and one of the glass lids was shattered. So I was obviously disappointed because I was looking forward to these pots and pans. I called up Amazon and I asked for a replacement lid. The lady said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get you a lid. I'm really sorry. And so she thought for another 10 seconds, and then she said, you know what? I have a better idea. I'm just going to refund your money entirely and keep the set of pots and pans. So in about 30 seconds, I went from being disappointed that I had a broken lid to saying, lid? What lid? I got free pots and pans. Woohoo! Now, why does that happen, and how does that relate to the question that you asked? It is because Amazon has understood for years that it is okay to lose money on an individual transaction in exchange for the lifetime value and loyalty that the customer is going to give you. And sure enough, if you look at my Amazon receipts, you will see that I have more than made up for that free set of pots and pans that I got for them. Most companies don't get that. they look at that $7.25. And by the way, I would subtract off the slice of cake and candle because they were going to do that anyway. So it's really only an incremental couple of dollars. But they look at that and they say, well, I want to know the ROI on this transaction. Well, the answer is that that family is going to come back when they might have chosen a different steakhouse. They're also going to tell their friends about you. And so they're going to bring new people. They're going to share it on social media, which is going to bring new people. Are we able to track all of this? We're not. But what we know is that the long-term value of an individual customer, and look, it's a steakhouse. This is not a cheap place, right? So the bill, just the value of a single family of four coming in for an additional meal is going to more than make up for that box of chocolates, right? So the concept is we have to look at long-term value of our customers and what they can do to help grow our customer base instead of looking at the one single transaction. I will also tell you that every time some restaurant does something nice for me like that, I end up making up for it in the tip for the waiter or waitress anyway. And so I do think if you actually wanted to look at that, I'd be willing to bet that the average tip goes up by about the value of that dessert that you're providing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Great. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, I know this book that you've written is about this idea of shareable, remarkable experiences. If I think about what we try to accomplish with customer experience, I guess, tell me what you think of this model, but I would argue that there's parts of customer experience that are those kind of moments of shareable delight. And there are other things we do that might not create something like, for example, if I go on if I have an auto claim and I go on the Geico website and it's quick and easy to submit my claim, I might not tweet about it. I might not share it with anybody. And yet I would argue there's value in that as well. How do you weigh activities that might focus on creating that magic moment that people might share versus things that go to creating just a kind of a smoother, easier, less frustrating, less confusing, less inconvenient experience, but might not be so sexy?
I'm so glad you brought this up because I've actually been writing a blog in the back of my head about this very topic because insurance is so difficult in the sense that we pay and we pay and we pay and we pay and we pay. And we don't really know what the experience is going to be until we have a claim. And that's the make or break moment. And so if Geico has a super easy
no pun intended
process, Yes.
I said no pun intended on the break.
If Geico has a super easy claims process, then the reaction to the customer is, phew, thank goodness I do business with Geico. I'm going to continue doing business with Geico. If in reverse, they don't cover the claim, or there's some fine print, or there's some way where I now feel like I've been taken advantage of, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to leave the company and go to another one. And so this is a great example of having to, as a former Chicago Cubs manager, Joe Madden likes to say, do simple better. The claims process should be simple. It should get you on your way as quickly as possible. It is, after all, why you're doing business with this company, just in case you have to make a claim. Insurance companies for years, though, have done the opposite. They've made the claims process impossible. They've gotten it. It's almost like they're trying to get people to give up so that they don't file a claim. That is not a way to keep a customer. So I think it's a very fascinating industry in that you don't really get much of an experience with your insurance company until you desperately need them. And then it's really make or break.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you two quick stories about insurance. One is a health insurance story, and this is from experience I had probably more than 15 years ago. I was working for a big consulting company at the time, and I got brought in to talk about how we could improve the customer experience of the claims website of a major, very well-known brand in the health insurance space. And I gave my presentation, and we had done some heuristics on the existing experience, et cetera. And when I was done, the guy, in fact, I don't even think I finished. The guy was like the senior vice president for claims or something. He basically implied that I was a complete idiot. And he said to me, "Don't you understand our business?" And I said, "Well, I think I understand it in some ways, not as well as you, sir. What's your feedback?" He goes, "You want me to spend money to make it easier for someone to file a claim? Is that what you are advising me to do?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right, get this idiot out of here. Don't bring this idiot back to my office again." And needless to say, we did not do the project for that particular company, but that's That's not an uncommon mindset, at least in health, especially in health insurance, at least at the time. I don't want to cast everybody in the same light. And of course, it's a little unusual with health insurance because very often the customer is actually the employer, not the one that's actually filing the claim. And then my other little tidbit I wanted to share is we did a research project for a major property and casualty insurance company one time, auto and home. And it was fascinating, the phenomenon that you talk about, the impact of a great experience in insurance anyway can be multi-generational. And we found more than one person who was, let's say we're interviewing somebody who's 40 years old and they're with, let's say, State Farm. And we say, well, how long have you been with State Farm? Since I got my license. Okay, that's like 24 years. Why have you stayed with State Farm all that time? Well, when I was 4 years old and my parents got into an auto accident, you start to get the story of something that happened in a prior generation, but where the claims experience really made them feel taken care of, that they were loyal to that company literally for the rest of their lives. And that's, I think, an extreme example of the kind of thing that you're talking about.
True. And we saw the same thing in the credit card industry. The number one predictor that somebody had a Discover card was that their parents had a Discover card. I mean, really? It was so clear. And so when you think about lifetime value of a customer, it isn't even just of that customer. It could be future generations. It could be people that they tell about and bring on for you, referrals, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not thinking broadly enough. And that's why you have people, and trust me, that guy, he may be retired by now, but there's other guys that have replaced him who think the same way. Why in the world would we make it easy for someone to file a claim? I don't know. That's why they've been paying you for months and months and months, is in case they have a claim. And no one wants to buy insurance, but we buy it in case of catastrophe. And then we expect when catastrophe happens that you're there. The day my son was born in 2006, the day, we were at the hospital and I got a call from my neighbor that our basement was flooded that day. And it turns out we had a sewage backup into our basement on the day our son was born. I ended up having to spend 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of my son's life, we were at my parents' house. And you know what? Everything got taken care of by my insurance company. They came, they cleaned it up, they replaced everything, they fixed the problem with the sewage. I didn't have to do a thing. And that's what I pay them for. That's exactly why you have insurance when something like that happens. So again, Absolutely. Am I therefore loyal to that company? Of course I am.
Yep, 100%. Well, I'm shocked to say that our half hour has been consumed because I feel like we've only just started talking about these topics because they're so rich and deep. We could talk for hours. But I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything else that you think is really important for folks to know while we have their attention for another minute. And also, if folks want to buy the book or want to learn more about you or your work or read more stuff that you've written, where should they go? What should they do?
Sure. Well, if you'd like to check out the experiencemakerbook.com, you will find a link to purchase the book, but also if you put your order number in, we have 3 awesome bonuses that you get for free and instantly when you buy the book. And also, I wanted to offer out to your audience, Howard, I have a free 10-day CX challenge. It's at 10daycxchallenge.com. Basically, you get a 90-second video from me every day that gives you a challenge to do at work with your team to start thinking about CX in a different way. People have told me that they're having so much fun with it. They grab the whole team to do it, and they really lean into it to start changing the culture around your business and to see how easy it is to make meaningful changes in customer experience that your customers will thank you for. So feel free to connect. I will say also one of the concepts in the book is about being responsive, and I practice what I preach. So if you reach out to me either on my website or in social media, I will respond, and I love hearing from people.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. And I want to likewise encourage everyone to check out The Experience Maker, available a lot of places. I know I got mine off Amazon, but you can also get it off Dan's site. And thank you so much for Dan. Thank you for being here. Great insights. Thank you all for listening and watching to this episode of the Winning Digital Customers podcast. Look forward to seeing you next time. Till then, keep transforming.